I still almost can't believe it. I do believe it, but I'm surprised by it. I first heard the number of 4.9 million foreigners in Canada who are supposed to leave in the next 13 months. I had never heard that number before. And I heard it from no one less than Pierre Poilievre the other day. Remember when he said that, just apropos of Donald Trump talking about the borders?
About a week ago, Justin Trudeau admitted that he broke our immigration system, and that brings new challenges. His own published documents show there are 4.9 million people here temporarily that are supposed to leave by December 31st of next year, 13 months from now. 4.9 million people. We asked what the plan was to track their departures, and yesterday his immigration minister said, we're just going to take people at their word. He admits that there have been 2 ISIS terrorists allowed into our country. What is the plan to protect our security and reinstate sovereignty over who is in our country?
That's an astonishing number. And although it's just terrifying for Canadians to know that more than 10% of our people on the streets have no right to be here 13 months from now, and there's no way they're just going to self-deport. I can understand why the United States of America is worried about our border, because if we ever were to enforce that, why wouldn't they just walk across into the States? That's an astonishing number, 4.9 million. Here's the exchange about it from a parliamentary committee the other day.
Minister, your department tabled documents with Parliament that show that 4.9 million visas are going to expire between September 2024 and December 2025. How will we know how many of those actually wind up leaving?
As you noted, MP Kamich, that when people come here, in many of their visa documents, they undertake to leave. As part of the Levels plan, there will be some visas that are temporary in nature that will not be renewed, and those people, when they undertook to come here, will be expected to leave, and that is simply a fact. We'll have to monitor that carefully. There are many measures within our department to monitor these things, but it's one that,
Minister,
given the volume in question, it's something that we'll have to be very careful in supervising.
Minister, I wasn't asking about whether they will leave or not. I'm asking you how will you ensure that a person whose visa has expired will leave? We know that just on study permits, there are 766,000 expiring by the end of December 2025. How will your department ensure that at the end of those study permit periods, those persons will leave?
Again, there are many ways that people leave the country, Tom. The vast majority leave voluntarily, and that's what's expected.
So explain those ways. How will you ensure it?
We work with our partners, including CBSA, to investigate, obviously, and prosecute those who violate immigration law. If someone refuses to leave, they're in violation of the law. And CBSA, after due process, has the legal obligation to remove people. Again, this isn't something that is taken lightly, but in the vast majority of cases, those people that have come here temporarily and do not have the right to stay, in fact, leave.
Yeah, I don't believe that there are enough border police to deport 4.9 million people in the next 13 months. I think that would require every police force, and perhaps even occasionally, I wouldn't want to have the military conducting police or immigration patrols in the country, but every single police force in the country would have to be dedicated for that fact to happen, to have 4.9 million people leave in the next 13 months. I thought it was less. I remember how astonished I was when I learned that 2 million people a year were coming to Canada, 1 million students. That's more than the number of Canadian students. Almost 1 million temporary workers, about twice as many as we have Canadian youth unemployed. 500,000 refugees, or whatever they're calling themselves now, and then about 500,000 regular immigration. I was astonished with those numbers, but it's almost triple that have built up, and you can feel it in almost every city and town in the country. And frankly, every park, every national park, every street. I mean, try getting a job. I saw an image the other day of a couple of jobs up for grabs at an LCBO and an enormous line at the door. And they all look like foreign citizens, frankly. Trying to get a job. Try getting a doctor. Those are 4.9 million people who are getting our free healthcare. Try getting through traffic. Try getting through a pro-Hamas protest that is manned almost exclusively by these Trudeau guests. That disgusting anti-Semitic display in my own neighborhood where someone dressed up as that Hamas terrorist leader, Yahya Sinwar, according to an online researcher named Leviathan, he's a Syrian refugee let in by Trudeau. Doesn't surprise me. Almost all the protesters are foreigners, I can tell by their foreign accent and, of course, their foreign ways, which is that they don't believe in pluralism and nonviolence, and they bring their age-old anti-Semitism from their home countries. By the way, there are no Jews in Somalia or Pakistan or Iraq. Like, those are Jew-free zones now. And so the fact that they're anti-Semitic is sort of baffling. They brought those ancient hatreds over by the million. Thanks, Trudeau. It's obvious that we're not going to do anything about it in Canada. In fact, it looks like Trudeau is lying even now when he claims to be reducing the numbers. I understand he's actually decided to bring in even more people from Gaza. Just for some food for thought, here's the wall between Egypt and Gaza. I don't know if you know what the map is like. Gaza is basically a rectangle, and one of the four sides of the rectangle touches the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. Two of the sides in this rectangle touch Israel. And the other end of the rectangle touches Egypt. And that's that fence. By the way, it's a much more powerful and impenetrable. There's 7 layers you can see there of concrete walls and barbed wire, much more forceful than between Israel and Gaza, which was a disaster for Israel on October 7th, 2023. I think there's a reason why Egypt has that wall. There's a reason why not a single Arab nation in the world is willing to take people from Gaza. They know that from birth they are inculcated in terrorism. I don't know if other Arab countries really care about the anti-Semitism part, but they know that Hamas has been teaching people in Gaza violence and terrorism for an entire generation, ever since Gaza was handed to Hamas in 2005, so exactly 19 years. The average population in Gaza isn't much older than 19 years, so half of people in Gaza from the day they were born till today have been fed a diet of anti-Semitism and violence. What Arab country would want to import them? Do you think Dubai, that gleaming jewel in the desert, would want to bring in people who have been taught hatred and explosion? By the way, they could have built a Dubai in Gaza. Like I say, it's on the Mediterranean. What a great place to be if you were friends and peaceful with Israel. Cairo's not far away. You've got a gorgeous beach. So much aid money has flown in. They could have built Dubai. Instead, they built underground terror tunnels. What a shame. By the way, Trudeau and Miller say that they will not deport people. They're relying on self-deportation. That's not really a thing. I mean, who would voluntarily go back to Pakistan or Syria or Afghanistan or Somalia? Would you? And I'm not even blaming them. We're the fools who let them in. If you came from a failed state, each of those countries I just listed is a failed state, would you voluntarily go back? Actually, that's sort of a trick question, because in many cases, these so-called refugees do go back to the countries where they're allegedly in danger. They go back for holidays or to visit friends and family. So they're not really in that much danger if they go back from time to time. So that's the Canadian approach. We've got 4.9 million people who do not have the right to be here, even under our lax system. And they have to leave by the end of next year, 13 months from now. They ain't gonna.